Okay, gewaltig. Sagt der heilige Mishnah. Cheresh shoyta v'katan sheshachtu v'achem roinaisa. So in the first Mishnah of the Masechta, we learned that that's a kosher shchita.
Right.
Therefore, chayv l'chasais. A kosher shchita, there's a chiv kisui. Now, avadi, there's no chiv on the cheresh shoyta v'katan to do kisi adam, but the chiv is to somebody who watched, somebody who sees it, is muchiv to do kisi. What about beinoy leveinatzim? What if the cheresh shoyta v'katan shechted without supervision? So that's not a kosher shchita. Potter milachasais, because it doesn't have it in shchita. V'chein le'inyan oisev es benoi sheshachtoi v'acher morin oisam also lishchad achereyan, because it's a shchita, and therefore the iser of oisev es benoi applies. But beinon leveinatzman, if there's no one supervising them, Reb Meir Mater, Reb Meir holds there's no reason to be makban oisev es benoi. There's a nit shchita. Mater lishchad achereyan. But the Chachamim say, no, you're not allowed to shecht. After you might be being over the Isser Oisev Espanai. But Umoidim Shem Shachat Shein Yisef, because they're boy. They're moided that at most it's a Suffolk Isser. So Avada, there won't be a Chiv Malchus, but Gavna, if someone shechted afterwards the Oiser of Benai. Frankly,
well, the straw is not good.
That's right. But even if the straw was good, it's we don't know if he was over an Isser. We don't know. We don't know if there's Isser. But what's interesting to note is their Rabbanan only argue that you have to be choishes for a Suffolk shchita in the Seifa, but Isser v'Isser Espanai. Why didn't the Rabbanan say misofik make Kisadam?
Yeah.
So Frank the Gemara for Rabbanan Maishna Reisha Deloy Palik Deloy Pligi Umaishna Seifa the Pligi. Zok the Gemara Reisha Iam Rinon Chayav and Lachasais. Can you imagine if people do Kisa Adam? So it makes it look like a legitimate shchita. Amri, people are going to say shchita mal yasahi v'asilamechal mishchitasa. People are going to say, oh, they're doing Kisa Adam, it must be a kosher shchita, and people are going to eat nevela. Zok the Gemara Seifa Nami. What about by the case of Oisei Vespenoi? Even the Kami Rabbanan also lishchad achareyan. If it's also to shecht the other half of the pair, well, people are either going to say Amri shchita mal yasei v'asel mechal mishchitas. Zok the Gemara, not at all, because just because someone is not shechting the animal, that doesn't prove anything. Amri bisra the loy kami boile. They'll say he didn't need two animals shechting; he only needed one. So it's not a riot. It's not a riot that he's withholding because of Oishev Espanoi, because the first shchita was a good shchita. Zok Gemara, if that's the case, Reisha Nami, just because someone is pouring sand on blood, that means he's doing the mitzvah Kisa Adam, and then people are going to think it's a kosher shchita? No. Amri lenaker chatzei rahutzar. Maybe he just doesn't want a puddle of blood in his chatzir, so he's covering it over with earth. So you don't see klor that it's a kosher shchita. So what is the difference? Zok Gemara, the difference is shachat bash. V'shachat in the ashba where there is no svara of lenaker chatzei, that's klor. He's doing it for the mitzvah, and that's where we're worried that he's clearly doing kisa adam, and it's going to be matter. Someone's going to think he can eat from the nevela. Or boli molech ma'ikolamin. If a guy's going to a rav and he's asking the rav, should I do kisa adam? And the rav says, yes, you must do kisa adam. From the rav's psak alone, the rav's telling you must do kisa adam. Does says that it's a kosher shchita. Correct Gemara, that svara applies by Oisei Vespenoi as well. You ask the Rav, I shechted the mother, can I shecht now the son? The Rav's going to say no. If the Rav says no, the Rav held that the shchita from the Shchayt of the cotton was a good. So there's no mokum to be mechalek between the Reish and the Seifa. So at the end of the day, why do the Rabbanan only argue with the Seifa? Zok to Gemara, El Rabbanan Akula Milsa Pli. Avada the Rabbanan are arguing in the Reisha as well. And Avada they hold that even by Kisa Adam, if a Cher showed the cotton Shach said you should do Kisa Adam, misofek that it might have been a good shchita. So Oy Bazoy, how come they didn't say their halacha in the Reisha? Teretz is v'notri lei l'Rab Meir ad masek lola milsa. The Chachamim are impolite. They waited till Reb Meir said his whole halacha, sai by Kisi Adam and sai by Yosy B'Spanoi, and then they argued. But they're arguing not only by Yosy B'Spanoi, Avadi they're arguing by Kisi Adam, and they have to be choshesh that it was a good shchita, and therefore sai you have to make Kisi Adam a chomra, and sai you're not allowed to shech Yosy B'Spanoi.
There's a difference between Kisei Adam and Yosy B'Spanoi. Somebody's saying he's shechting the second animal. He's clear that by him it's clear that it was a good shechita, right?
If he shechted the second animal, it's clear that the first shechita wasn't a good shechita.
Wasn't good shechita. No, but if you tell him that if you tell him don't shech the second animal.
So that's the Rav is basically telling him that the first shechita was a good shechita.
Yeah, but by Kisei Adam,
the Rav saying do Kisei Adam, so the Rav's also telling you it's a good shechita.
No, but he said that Lanaka Chaseroi.
The actual doing key. If you see someone doing Kisei Adam, so you don't know anything. But what about the guy himself who asked the Shaila by the Rav? So till now we're talking about someone's going to see the Kisei, he'll think that it's kosher. Now we're saying no, the Etzim guy himself, when he asks the Shaila and the Rav answers him, that's where the problem is.
Yeah, but before that, the guy somebody sees him doing Kisei Adam.
Right.
So he thinks
that's not right. Maybe it's Lanaka Chaser.
So you're telling you don't say this. It's al Kisei Adam is not Chaser, but the guy is going to still think like that.
Which guy? The guy watching?
Watching.
No, the guy watching. What the Gemara is saying, whenever you see someone pouring earth on dam, you don't say naturally everyone's automatically assuming it's kisei. It's a normal thing. People do it all the time. They probably knew it was the derech to put earth over dirt in a chutzner, so it doesn't necessarily stick out.
Okay, but that's a stretch.
It's a stretch if you don't know how things worked in those days. But in those days, that was a very normal thing. It was probably very normal every day to see people covering things over with earth.
All right,
because they didn't have grass in those days and they didn't have patios.
Right.
So it was probably a very common thing.
Right.
So Zok Gemara, the chashash is from the Rov's psak. That's where the problem.
Right.
Zok Gemara. Okay, so the Rabbanan now have a very good svara. Their choshen maybe it was a good shechita. So b'shtem Rabbanan l'chumra. El Reb Meir my time. Why would Reb Meir say that you're 100%? You don't have to worry. Maybe it's not a good shechita. How can you be so sure that there's no problem with Yosy B'Spanoi? How can you be so sure that there's no problem there's no chiyuv of Kisei Adam? Omer Reb Yaakov, Omer Reb Yochanan, because Reb Meir has a shita. Mechayiv Hoyer Reb Meir al Shritosan Mishum Nevela. Reb Meir held it's not a sofek nevela and a cherish right to the sheh. It's a vada nevela. Why is that? My timer. Omer Abami Hoyel v'Reiv Masei Mikol Kolim. Since the Reiv the Maisa of a cherish right to the cotton don't work out, so Mamela you have a Rubai Kakuloi telling you that it's a posel shchita. You can give malchus based on Rubai Kakuloi if someone eats it, and you could take it to the bank that it's not a good shchita, and therefore there's no problem with Yosy B'Spanoi, and there's no reason to be mechayiv Kisei Adam. The problem here is, what are the Rabbanim? If there's a roiv that Masei Nikol Kolin, so what about the Rabbanim? Yeah. So Mimuzogin that the Rabbanim hold it's not a roiv, which leads me to a problem of is it a machlokes and metzias?
It is, yeah.
So I don't have a shot in that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what pshat the machlokes is. So the Art Scroll writes there's a machlokes how to assess what's going on, but I'm not sure. Let's look at Toys. My time at Reb Meir Hoyel v'Roiv my say Nikol Kol. Hiksur of Shmuel Mivarden. V'Rabbanan my temai. Im Roiv my say Misukanim. Then im ken yehi muter lechal mishchitas. V'yoy Hashoichet achareim, amai any seifek rabbanim. You have a right to say it was a good shchita. Be palgu palga, and if you hold it's mamish 50-50, im smoich palga de mikol kolim lichazaka the oimid becheskes iser beIsrael mechta de misukanim. So weiter kenye mutter lishchot achareim. V'gam yischayv al shchidas mishum nevela. So what's going on? Yishlam is a toifus the mesaf kulu rabbanon. I roiv ma'aseh mikol kolim. I roiv ma'aseh misukanim.
So you still
Therefore,
back.
Chazaka doesn't help.
You're
So
back to
I
Matthias.
don't understand. They have a suffix of what the Matthias is.
You're back to Matthias, yeah.
Well, they can have a suffix of what the Matthias is. They're not sure about the statistics. And your mayor is sure about the statistics. So maybe that's not the Shemach like the Matthias. Maybe the way they derive their statistics, that's a little bit of a questionable way. Because it's a statistic. How do you verify such a statistic? So maybe it was a shaila how to I'm just trying to understand though.
Yeah.
The whole gufa, we ones have to give a machlekes b'mitzias, but the Rabban and Shita Meneo Bay besides your mayor, they weren't sure about the statistic. Why not? The teretz is how you can know exactly how many are mice and mukal kol. So it could be just too hard to calculate.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I don't have a clarity in the answer, but at least we have the words of Toisus.
Yeah.
Okay, Zok to Gemara Vayta. Frank the Gemara, why was it necessary for a mayor to say that Roy Maaseh Mikol Kolim in order to be a vadai that this is a pasal l'shchita? Amar Leir a papa or Afuna Beredia B'Shul, Amar Leir Afuna Beredia B'Shul or papa. My you're in your right. According to a mayor, you don't need a right. I feel minuk nami because we know the famous shita of our mayor. There are mayor chayis l'meuta. So I bezoi, even if it's only a miyat of Maaseh Mikol Kolim, but smoich miyuta lechazaka, connect the miyut of Maaseh Mikol Kolim to the chazaka of Eiver Menachai, v'islo Aruba. And Rashi explains that according to Reb Meir, it totally eliminates the roy. So now it's not like a 50-50 chazaka and miyut connected the roy. The roy is pulverized; it evaporates. There's no roy at all. That's how Rashi learns. Tosha doesn't learn that way, but this is how Rashi learns.
Right.
The Tanan we learned, and we're going to see. I always thought Chayish Lamiyuta is Lechumra. We're going to show you that Reb Meir holds Chayish Lamiyuta even Lekula.
Lekula. Because
it's not Tinuk Shenimtza B'Tzado Isa. There was a Tinuk that was sitting right beside a dough, Batzak B'Yad. Rashi learns that means Vadai, he touched the Isa, and the suffix is if the child was Tomei. So Reb Meir Metayer, V'Chachamim Metamin. Why are the Chachamim Metamin? He's probably tummy because he touched something in the ashba and became tummy. That's how Rashi is. Doesn't pass for touching dirt in an ashba. The lashon l'tapech means playing with dough. So he learns that the kid is vadai tummy, and the question is, did the kid touch the dough? So it says that the kid has dough in his hands, right? And he's right near an Isa. So he says, maybe how did the kid get the dough? Not because he grabbed some of the dough and he touched it. Maybe there was a person there, an adult, and he saw that this tummy kid is sitting right near the dough, and he was afraid if he touches it, he'll mess it up. So what he did is he took a piece of dough, the adult took a piece of dough with the hira and gave it to the kid. So if the kid's playing with dough, maybe he won't touch the big dough. But whatever the case is, you have a roiv here, a roiv saying that this dough is tummy. That's why the chacham are metamin. So why the Rameir Matayr? I have a roiv saying the dough is tummy. My time in Rameir because kosav a roiv tinaka is metapkin, but a miyot ain't metapkin. So you have a miyot. The isazu becheskes tahayra imedis, and the isus becheskes tahayra. So zok Rameir smoich miyuta lechazaka. Let's turn on Tam and Beis. So you see, Reb Meir is chayish l'riyuta mamish even l'kula. It's obliterating the rough. Zok to Gemara that you can't bring a raya from tumah v'tahira the isha v'heter because in amru sofek tumah l'taher just because by a sofek tumah they held that it would be tahar that doesn't mean by Isra V'Heter they wouldn't make. Yoiru Sofik Isra L'Hater. So because of Reb Meir's Chayish L'Miyuta, they wouldn't go so far as to say that you could be over Oisei V'Spinoi.
Right.
Therefore, Reb Meir B'Dafka needed to say that Roiv Maisa Milkul. So therefore, you have a Roiv that together with the Chazaka saying that this is not a good sheet.
Okay.
Tosfos has a beautiful kasha. There's no such thing as Tumah V'Tahira being only Tumah Tahira, not Isra V'Heter. Because what if it touches Truma? Now it's Nagel Yisura. So Zog Tosfos, Sumoich Miyuta L'Chazaka, V'Isra L'Aruba. Oh, 1 second. Is this the Tosfos that I'm looking for? Yeah. Zog Tosfos Mashma the Havalei Palgol Palgol. Rashi learned that V'Isra L'Aruba and the Aruba is totally bottom. But Tosfos says, no, Isra L'Aruba, meaning the Aruba is not so strong anymore. But you still have the right. It doesn't say it's gone, it says it's Isra. So it should be like a Palgol Palgol. On one hand you have Roy, and on the other hand you have the Chazak and the Miyat. Zok Tosfos, so why is it Taka Tahar? The Tam, Sofik Tumul Tahar, Frek Tosfos, what's the Svar of Sofik Tumul Tahar? Ve'av Apisha Betumah Nami Ika Isra. How could you say, okay, Tumah is not so chomer, but Tumah could lead to Isra as well in Haya Truma? If it was Truma, it would have a big nafkamina. There's a chiv misa with a shemayim for eating it. Mefarish Rabbeinu Chaim, Mishum the Tina Kavadover Shein Bedas Li Sha'el. And we learned from Soita, Garminim Soita, L'Tayr, Afil B'Shus HaYochid. So even though Sofik Tameh B'Shus HaYochid is Fekei Tameh, that's if it's Yesh Bedas Li Sha'el. Like the two people by the Soita. But a cotton, a Bedas Li Sha'el, we say that it's Tar. So therefore, by Sofik Tumah, we have Exer Sakosov, learned from Soita, that Sofik Tumah is going to be Tar. But by Isra V'Heter, you don't have that rule. And therefore, Sofik Yisura L'Chumra. Zok to Gemara, Hayre Rabbi Reb Meir, Hayre Rabbi Kachachamim. Rabbi passing like Reb Meir that you don't have to make Kisu Adam, and you don't have a problem with voice of Espinoi. Hayre Rabbi Kachachamim that you do have a problem with voice of Espinoi, and you do have a problem with Kisu Adam. Frank the Gemara, if Rabbi Paskin contradictory, he must have been Chayzer. So we need to know what's the last opinion that he had to know how to fierce it. I mean, and this is a fascinating story, and I'm going to need your help. The Rab Abba bar Rab Chia bar Abba, Rab Abba the son of Rab Chia bar Abba, the Rab Zera have a kaimu b'shuka de Kisri a pischa de ve midrash. There was a besmedish right in the Shuk of Kisri, and they were standing and schmoozing for shteitzach and learning right outside the Besmedrash in Kisra. Novik Rabami came out of the Besmedrash. Ashkichinu, he saw them outside. Amalu, he told them, Lava mina l'chu b'idon be midrasha loy sakimu avroi. Didn't I tell you when there's a shear in the Besmedrash, you shouldn't be outside? You need to be inside. You know why? Because you are from the prized Talmidim who understand the shear, who would be able to say it over and share it with other Talmidim who might not have the shear.
Right.
You might have somebody who needs to get Clarkite in the shear, and he would be looking for you guys to explain it to him, and you're not around. And therefore, and he won't have a Clarkite because you weren't there to explain it to him. So get inside. Rab Zera went inside, Rab Abba loy. And this is what I don't understand. Why did Rab Zera go and Rab Abba not? Unless Rab Abba held that if Rab Zera is there, he's not needed. Only one of them are needed. Okay. Like if Rabbi scolded them and told them to go in, so why would Rabbi ignore it?
Right.
Anyway, look what happened. When Reb Zera got in, what was the conversation in the Besmedrash? Punkt ar shaila, becoming boilahu haimina yochita. Amul Reb Zera told Rabbi, if you would have let me stay outside, I could have asked for Baba. Lo shavkus and li the ishayla l'saba. You're not letting me go outside to ask for Abba. Dilma Shmile Me'avua. Maybe he heard it from his father, who is Reb Chia bar Abba. V'avu mined Reb Yochanan, and Reb Chia might have heard it from Reb Yochanan, who's for Laslich. V'osebes Reb Chia bar Abba would have heard it from Reb Yochanan. Every 30 days he took a dirshu test by Rabbi Yochanan. So he would have got the information. So now I can't go outside. So my havala. So what is the maskana? What was Rebbe's last? Takma the Shalach Rebbe Eliezer Lagoyla. Rebbe Eliezer sent a message to the Goyla. Hey, Rebbe Kreb Meir. We know about Karabana Nami. I read a lot. I know how that Christish Mami know. Rebbe Eliezer, I guess, who was later announced that Rebbe Paskins Kreb Meir Lakula. It must be that was Rebbe's last psalm.
Okay.
What if someone shechted 100 chayis in one spot? Kisei echad l'kulan. You only have to do kisei adam once. What are you looking for?
An electrical meter.
I have one. I'll tell you exactly where it is. If you go into the garage, in one of the boxes, I have a brand new one lying in a brand new box. Okay. So shachad me'ach chayis b'makam echad, kisei echad l'kulan. What about male oifis b'makam echad? What if it's 100 birds? Vayter kisei echad l'kulan. What about chayah b'oif b'makam echad? Again, kisei echad l'kulan. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, by chayah no, if you have to separate. Shachad chayah chasena v'acher kach yishchot esot. Toner Rabbanan zok te'ele gemara. Chayah is a very general word. Kol mashma, it's mashma any quantity. Chayah bein meruba uvein mu'etes. Oif, on the other hand, is also called mashma. Oif bein meruba bein mu'et. Mikan omru, from here we see that shachat meya chayos b'makam echad kisi echad l'chul. If you shechted 100 chayos b'makam echad, one kisi would be enough. How about meya oifos b'makam echad? Again, kisu echad l'chul. How about chaya v'oif b'makam echad? Also kisu echad l'chulan, which was the svar of the Tanakh.
But how do you see that? How do you see that from where?
It's a Mishnah. It's the same as the Mishnah.
Yeah, I'm saying, but the more is the coil chaya is coil mashma. But how do you see that the two can mix?
I guess because there's no reason to say they're separate. Rabbi Yehuda Omer shachat chaya yichasena v'achagach yishchot esot. Why? Shenemar chaya oy oy. So oy tells us that you have to separate. Omer loy. So the Chacham told him, "What do you mean?" Harayu Omer in the next pasuk, ki nefesh kol basar domay benafshay. Well, what does that mean? What does have a shaykhus to this shayla? Frank the Gemara, Maika Mahadrili. What are we the Rabbanan telling Rabbi Yehuda? Zok the Gemara, we're missing some back and forth of this conversation. So now let's explain exactly what happened. Hachi Karmele Rabban. Hi Oy, how could you use Oy to tell me that you have to separate the Kisei Adam of the Oy from the Kisei Adam of the Behema? You need the Oy to tell you that Kisei Adam you're mechuyev to do, even if you only shech an Oy, or if you only shech a Chayah. Otherwise, you would have thought that you're not Chayav Kisei Adam unless you actually shechted Saya Oy and Saya Chayah. Right. So I need the Oy for that. So how could you, Rabbi Yehuda, use the Oy to tell me that you have to separate the Kisei? Rabbi Yehuda, Lachalik Midamay Nafka. At the end of the pasuk, it says V'chisa. It says V'shofach es Damoy V'chisa b'afar. So from Damoy, he knows it's either one animal, either an oif or a chaya. So the oy he still has available to teach him that you have to separate the kisei adam. Zog to Gemara. So what did they answer? Rabbi Yehuda lechalek midamay nafka. Rabbanon, and this is what the Brisa says. Damay tuba mashma. Damay doesn't necessarily mean singular, because if you look at the next pasuk, there damay means many animals. Yechsiv ki nefesh kol basar damay b'nafshayu. So you could be referring to multiple animals. Amar Chanina, moida hayir Rabbi Yehuda linyan bracha she'enim avarach el bracha achas. We're not talking about the bracha of Kisei Adam. We're talking about the bracha al shchita. You made a bracha on the shchita of a knife, and now you make Kisei Adam. Now, after that hefsek of Kisa Adam, you're now going to make a shchita on a chay. Because you read those, you have to separate them. Zok Rabbi Akiva, the fact that you did Kisa Adam is not mafsik, and you can continue shechting the chaya with the same bracha that you made on the shchita. Why do you say that? Maybe the Kisa Adam should be a hefsek. Why should it be any different than a story that happened with the Talmidei Rav relevant to Birchas Hamazon? There are Bruna, Reb Chananel, Talmidei de Rav Havu, Yasvi b'Sudasa. They were sitting and enjoying a Suda. Koyalai Rabbi Saba came to them. Amrulay, they told them, have a liver, let's have a kois, we're going to make Birchas Hamazon a kois, and they poured a kois. Then they said, you know what, let's not bench now, let's continue our Suda. Let's just drink that kois, continue our Suda. Now they were mafsik the Suda. Do they have to make a new bracha? Amalu Rabbi Besaba Hachi Amarav Kivin Domer Hav Livrich Itzar Le Lemishti Chamra. It's also for them to drink wine until they make a new bracha. So Ibazai, why did you say the same thing? Legabi the Kisu Adam. Hakanami Kivin the Itful Le Kisui. Since he now changed tracks from Shchita to Kisui, so it should be a hefsek. And the Chayv Le Bracha, when he shechs the Chaya, he should have to make a bracha. Zokt Gemara, there's no comparison at all. Hachi Ashta. Let's turn on to Pei Zayin. From an Aleph. Hachi Ashta. Hasta Mishta Uvruchi Behadadodi Layach. You're either benching or you're drinking. So, by the fact that you're saying we're benching, that is a clear half-stick to the Suda. So that's why you have to make a new bracha. But Kisa Adam is not a hefsek b'shchita. Hacha efshir the shachet b'chadu mechatz b'chadu. You can technically shecht with one hand and make Kisa Adam with the other hand. In other words, it's not a steer. Kisa Adam is not a steer to shchita, and therefore the shchita, the bracha of the shchita should be fine. I got weiter today with the oilam, so I want to get weiter now. Shachet v'loy Kisa v'ro acher chayv l'chasas. So anyone who sees that there's Kisa Adam necessary have to go to the mitzvah. What about Kisov in the skala? You make Kisa Adam and the wind blew it away. You don't have to do it again. Kisoy Ruach, if the Ruach blew earth on it, but you didn't do the Kisoy, Chayav l'chas. Panarabban, the Shafach v'chisa. We learn from there, Misha Shafach yichase. The person who does the Shchita, he's the one who has the mitzvah of Kisa Adam. What about Shachat v'loy Kisa? What if the Shaychet didn't do Kisa Adam? The Ro Acher and someone saw it, Minayin Shechayev l'chasses. How do you know that anyone seeing it has a chiyuv to make Kisa Adam? Shenemar ve'omer levnei Yisrael. The pasuk says in the pasuk, the Nefesh, the second pasuk of Kisa Adam, it says Ki Nefesh kol basar dami b'nafshehu ve'omer levnei Yisrael. So clearly, this is not just a tzivoy to the Shaychet. It's a shaychet to anybody who sees it. Tanya Yidich, the shafach v'chisa. We learn from there is b'masha shafach boy yichase. The thing that you use to shecht it, which is your hand, that's what you should use to make kisui. Shalo yichasenu b'regel. Don't just push b'zoyin, just push some earth over it with your foot. Shalo yiyu mitzvos b'zoyis. Do it by kovedik with your hand. Tanya Yidich, we have another brayso that says b'shafach v'chisa. Misha Shafach hu yichasenu. Who has the main mitzvah to do the Kisa Adam? The Shaychet. Ma'isa be'echot sheshachat. There was a story where someone checked it, and really it was his mitzvah to do Kisa Adam. Yeah. And what happened? The Kodam Chaver v'Kisa. Someone chapped the mitzvah. The Chayvay Rabbi Gamliel litin lo yud zehuvim. He was mechayiv, the person who chapped the mitzvah to pay yud zehuvim, which the Arshko makes a calculation is about 5 years' salary. How
much is that?
He says it's about 5 years' income.
Wow.
Because he says 10 zehuvim is like 10 dinarim. 10 dinarim is there's 25 zuz in a dinner, so 10 zehuvim I think is 250 zehuvim, and I think you need 50. You need 50 dinner to live a year. He has a cheshbon. It's a very very big amount of money.
Uh-huh.
So the Gemara has a shot. What are the 10 zugim for? Is it schar mitzvah because he chapto is the mitzvah, or maybe it's the mitzvah together with the bracha, or schar bracha? If what he chapto is from this friend was not kisur adam, but he chapto is a birchas amos. And the question is, how do you chap someone's birchas amos? And we're going to see a story soon. If it's only the schar mitzvah, birchas amos is one mitzvah. The Yavetz Char Bracha, well, then have you an arboya, because you'd have to give 40 those because there's 4 brachas. What was the law? Tashma. The Omer Le'ahu Tzeduki LeRebbe. A Tzeduki came to Rebbe. Here it says Tzeduki, but in the Gemara that I used to, it said Mina, a Min. Mi Sheyatzar Harim, according to your scripture, the God that created mountains, Loi Bar Ruach, didn't create the winds. How do I know? That's mashma, it's 2 different gods. Only Rebbe told him, Shoita, you're a freaking idiot. You didn't read the whole pasuk. Shvil was safe for the crow. At the end of the pasuk rounds it all up, and it says the who is all these entities? It's all the same entity. It's all the same Rebbeinu Shalom. So the Min didn't know what to say. Amalei said, good point, Rabbi. I didn't think of that. Give me 3 days. I should have a chance to contemplate this. To Yufta, and I'll already come back. So Yosy Rebbe Tlas Tanesim. Rebbe thought 3 Tanesim and think to himself, Rebbe was good. He was fasting that the men should see the emes. Kiava Kaboy Mivrach. He was about to eat a Suda on the 3rd day. There was a knock on the door. Amar like Tzeduki Kaya Baba. There's a Tzeduki by the gate. Amar said, "Oh, my mazel be eaten by Barusi Rosh. In the middle of my Suda, they're giving me poison." Amar like Rebbe, the Tzeduki said, "Rebbe, I know I'm not the same Tzeduki that you spoke to yesterday, but I have good news for you. Because your enemy couldn't find an answer. The Nafal min Hagat umeis, and he fell off the roof and he died." We're going to stop here. I just want to share a story. There were once missionaries that were coming down my street, knocking on everyone's doors. So all the bovers screamed at them, "Get out of our neighborhood, stop bothering us, get out of here, we don't want to talk to you." The guy comes to my door, I answer the door, I said, "Oh, come on in, let me give you a coffee, we'll sit down, we'll talk." So I bring the guy in, they sit him down, they give him a coffee, and they schmooze with him. And then said, "Okay, so what did you want to say?" They said, the truth is, we're not sure, we never ever got this far. Only
you would do that.
It's not. I didn't really happen.
No,
my imagination. Okay, good.
Tomorrow you're back. You'll be in Shul.
I plan to be in Shul. Yeah.
Okay. It's good. That's love, Rabbi.
Oh, man, it's good.